welcome back to the Director's Garage. Tray tables up and seats in their upright position, folks. I am your host and resident idiot Michael, and today, folks, I'm diving into this module right here. This is the iFi Pro iDSD signature. Well, not literally, I wouldn't fit. And what is up with the long names at iFi? Like, this is crazy. Well, this is an all-in-one streamer dac-amp combo that has expansion to add a matching amp for those tougher-to-drive headphones. You're going to need it. I was sent this unit by our friends at iFi to review and return. And what I'll say off the top is that, well, this unit is $3,250. It's a lot. And that puts this in some pretty hefty competition. Now, I love a product that lets me approach playback from a variety of different ways. And this product on paper, well, that fits that bill. But when I put this thing through its paces, I found some good, some great, and some not so good. But let's start with some good, and this thing is, well, it's beautiful, guys. It's awesome, and it's well built. It feels hefty, and everything feels high quality. It's a standout on any desktop, I think. There's no plastic to mention anywhere, and you get a nice remote, and it's packed with features. I love the screen. It's easy to read, and it tells you exactly what's going on within the unit at just a glance. Just not now, because I don't have any power attached to it. The iFi logo up here either glows orange or white, depending on if you are enabling the tube stage, and yes, this thing has either tube or solid state to select from for the pre. They both give you a little bit of a different flavor to the presentation of the music. Love it. Now, the knobs all click and turn with precision. Now, the volume knob here, folks, this thing's motorized, and it's always a crazy thing when you turn the device off and you see the volume knob moving on its own. It gives this whole shebang a finished and high and feel, and yeah, I just said shebang. I'm not sure what that's about. Well, now this knob on the left, this selects input, and you press on this knob and it starts adjusting the screen brightness. Kind of a curious choice for that trigger, but I'll allow it. Now the smaller knob next to it, this is the filter knob, and it lets you cycle through the various filters, and there are an impressive number of them. Now honestly, they all kind of sound the same to me, but I did settle on transient aligned, whatever that means. Now, this knob also depresses, and that enables two different functions. A short press will enable the different upsampling modes that happen via DSD, and there are 3 of them. One's not enough. Now, if you are on the app or Wi-Fi input, a long press puts this device into pairing mode. What is it pairing to? Well, now on the bottom of the unit, you have the solid state and tube pre-mode selector, and they do sound separate and distinct. You get a crisper, sharper attack on the music with the solid state mode engaged, and a smoother, warmer approach with the tube enabled. If the tube is engaged, the iFi logo up here, well, it lights up a nice glowy orange. Otherwise, it's a basic white. There's also a feedback loop, though, if you go all the way over to the right, and it will engage an error correction circuit. Generally, I preferred this thing in solid state mode, but it's fun to play with, and at $3,200, this thing should be fun, right? Now, the other hard toggle on the bottom here is the gain switching. You get up to 18 dBs of gain on this thing. That is a shit ton. But leave it at 0, folks, because I found that the sacrifices to the signal quality aren't worth it, at least in my opinion. This amp seems to get noisy as you up the gain. Now, again, gain, folks, is not the same as power. You're only affecting the sensitivity of the amp, not the power output. Think of it like the ISO setting on your camera. You can make an image brighter by making the sensor more sensitive to light by upping the ISO. but it's at the expense of adding noise and grain to your photo. Now, the best way to make an image brighter is to add light to what you're shooting. Exact same concept here, except instead of adding light, you're adding voltage to the amp circuit. Does that make sense? Now, iFi is known for producing Swiss Army-like products. Feed it any format, any sample rate, and it will just do its thing. And for the most part, it works as advertised. There were a few quirks, though, that I ran into. Now, I use the Meze Elite for my testing. It's an easier to drive headphone and one of my favorites. I already ran through some of those tougher to drive headphones in the unboxing, looking at you, Modhouse. And I didn't want to revisit that territory since I'd already kind of sussed it out. In my opinion, if you want to listen to tougher to drive headphones, you got to do the right thing with this thing and get an outboard amp, or you're going to be selling your expensive headphones short. Now, I don't have great comparison gear to test and A/B this iDSD fairly. I did run it against my Lena stack with the Zale HM1 on top, but you're talking about a system upwards of 30 grand against a $3,000 plus box. Now, I'll tell you what I found out for the sake of argument, but it's not even reasonably fair. The iDSD sounded more bunched up and thick in the sound, whereas the Lena spread the sound out with greater distinction, and the transient detail was just off the charts on the Lena compared to the iDSD. Individual instruments had more texture under the Lena, as you might expect, and there's a weight behind, say, a drum hit that suggests more depth on the Lena stack. Again, this is so not fair to do to the iDSD, but I thought you might like to know the differences I hear between my Uber system and something more in the mid-tier. And if you're on a budget, I wouldn't say I heard anything bad coming out of this thing. It's under comparison that you begin to hear what's possible, even if the comparison is entirely ridiculous. Generally, I found the iDSD to do a nice job. Playing back my higher res files over USB, I dove into some Zeppelin and some Stones and Miles and Adele, and I really enjoyed this little guy. As long as I was streaming or playing back DSD or standard PCM high res files via USB, this thing did its job and gave me an enjoyable experience. But moving to MQA use, I began uncovering several unusual bugs, particularly when using Roon. Now this thing, at least according to the manual, is a Roon endpoint. Now playback through Roon as a source, everything worked as it should for file playback when connected via USB. DSD was recognized and played back perfectly. Switching to Tidal through Roon, PCM playback worked terrific over USB. However, through Roon, MQA playback was not consistent. There was some dropouts that caused this skipping effect in the music, whereas the Lena performed perfectly in the same configuration. The skipping was consistent across several different sample rates, and I tried a few different USB cables and wiring setups. It continued to skip and lose sync with the Tidal server through Roon under MQA playback. Now, unplugging the USB, I moved this thing over to my Roon network setup on my LAN, and playing back MQA wasn't even working. Apparently, going over the network neuters the settings available on this thing to Roon, whereas under USB, you have full access to this thing's menus and settings. MQA will not work through Roon if you are using a LAN setup. So there are use cases where you have some compromises happening on this thing, and then you got the one mode MQA through Roon over USB that won't play properly. But I did find a remedy, and that's to go back to USB and run the Tidal app direct from my desktop, bypassing Roon. In that case, everything worked perfectly. MQA playback was smooth, and I really found this arrangement to be the best sound I got out of this box altogether. It's just something in the Roon hookup with the box that's causing MQA to skip and hiccup. But if you're on Tidal, it doesn't support playback of your DSD files. So you're going to have to go back into Roon to play your DSD stuff, but then your MQA isn't going to play back smoothly. So you can see some frustration building if I'm trying to jump formats and tracks quickly. Now, another positive use case was streaming direct from a phone. This thing locked up right away to my iPhone as an AirPlay source, and I could stream Tidal or Apple Music or anything I wanted to this thing wirelessly. Pretty damn cool, right? Now, my only issue here is that even though I had Max enabled on Tidal and I was playing files that were up to 192, it only came in as PCM44. I could upsample that signal to DSD 1040 inside the unit, but it's disappointing that I couldn't get anything greater than 44 to come out of the iPhone. Now, I believe that this is a limitation of AirPlay, though, not necessarily anything inside the iFi device. Now, these seemingly small issues may not be important to everyone. You may just want to play some music back over your box, in which case, have at it. But just know that if you're using this box over Roon, USB is the only way you're going to have access to what I consider to be important settings, like DSD playback and settings for MQA, and MQA isn't consistent unless you're using the Tidal app without the Roon overlay. Now, the other disappointment I had was the app situation. I couldn't get this thing to pair over the Wi-Fi network to any of the iFi app. I tried 2 iFi apps on my iPad and my phone, as well as the recommended WIM Home app. Nothing worked. I followed the instructions, but I kept getting hung at assigning it to a network, and WIM wouldn't log into my Tidal account direct. It kept saying login successful, and then quickly login failed. Now, I think if I could get one of these apps working, that would be a way to bypass the limitations of AirPlay. WIM could see my Tidal app running in the background if I had it going on the phone, but it was also showing me that it was playing over AirPlay at 44.1. USB would seem to be the way to go with this unit, and it does say USB up really small here next to the iDSD, but it's also advertising these other methods as well, and it has this antenna in the back that suggests Wi-Fi should be an option here. You can make the call from there. Okay, so let's start wrapping this all up. What does it all mean? Well, I think that the iFi Pro iDSD Signature is a classy looking product, even if the name is a little on the long side. I think it sounds generally good to great under most normal use situations. The amp is on the lean side for your tougher to drive headphones, and if you have, say, a Modhouse Tungsten, don't even consider buying this unless you have an amp to pair with it. Pushing the gain, I believe, will lead you down the road to certain disappointment. If you're into streaming high-res files over USB, this thing gonna do the job. It's gonna come out great. But if you're into, say, MQA and network setups, well, you start running into some limitations here. Compared to my other gear here, well, it's kind of tough because most of the other stuff I have is on the higher end side. But I found this thing to be enjoyable under high-res playback on my Meze Elites, and pairing it with Tidal on my computer over USB was the way to go for sure. I've tried to look to the positive on this product. iFi did get a lot right. The tube mode, the filters, it's Roon mostly ready. But it didn't get everything right. And if you're touting MQA playback, it's a sticker on the box, it ought to be seamless under any situation. If it's Roon ready, Roon should be able to control all of this device under any hookup. Network, USB, whatever. And at more than $3,200, this thing has got to perform, at least to my way of thinking. You are in some hefty territory at that price point, and I can't give this thing a recommendation with good to great sound because there are some outstanding sounding setups out there that you can dive into at this price point that I believe offer fewer compromises. In a world where the new Eversolo DMP A8 is $2,000, pair that with, say, a shit amp, and you've got a more formidable setup for the same price with a touch screen. Or you can look at the new FiO R9. These all-in-one boxes have evolved tremendously. Now, there is one factor that iFi happens to do really well, and they do this well throughout their product line, really, and that's fun. This thing is fun to use. It's fun to play with. I love all the different modes and the settings, and I had a good time reviewing it. If you're into tweaking and a lot of settings and love playing with different digital filters, well, then this may very well be for you. But it also helps that it's pretty and it's going to look really nice on your desktop. Personally, I think there is good stuff happening here, but it's not enough good stuff to tell you to go run out and buy this thing. Ferrum, Hollow Audio, Burson, Cord. The iFi is in that territory price-wise. And for pure sound, my opinion, pure sound, I would rather have my Cord TT1, the first gen Cord tabletop dac-amp, and give up all the streaming stuff. The DAC on the Cord is so solid, and the amp on the TT1 is stronger. I can stream through a computer just as I did with this iFi device in its best configuration and not feel like I'm losing any beats other than native, even if limited, MQA support. And if I wanted to expand to MQA, there are a lot of great options out there for not a lot of money. So that's my review of the iFi Pro iDSD Signature. This product does a lot, but just not enough for what it costs, in my opinion. But folks, do what you want. Don't let a guy on YouTube or a magazine article tell you what sounds good to you. Get out there and listen to this stuff for yourself with your own ears. It's worth it. Now, I'm going to be sending this unit back to iFi, and if they want to send something else my way, I'd be happy to check it out. I've had some good experiences with their products, and I'm currently using the iFi Go dongle, a product I purchased, and I'm enjoying it. And I also liked the portable iFi Micro iDSD Signature, though I didn't really like the name of it. But this one fell short of what I want and expect from a $3,200 product. Okay, coming soon, it's a Patreon choice. My Patreon subscriber, Marcus, well, he subscribed at the Backstage Pass level, and it gets him some voting rights in his subscription. So I'm turning the decision over to him. It's either going to be an unboxing of a mystery box from Audio 46, one of my favorites to do, or it's going to be a full review of the Zale HM1. So subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. I don't even know yet. Give this episode a thumbs up if you liked my review of the iFi Pro iDSD Signature USB, or you can do the other thing if I missed the mark on this thing. And I can't say I blame you either way. I might have, and I will see you before you know it.